Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. First of all, again, sorry for this abrupt change in our class. I just had my nap. Hopefully, I'll be able to go through this recording. And just one housekeeping issue. I know that in the next 4 weeks, from week 3 until week 6, we're going to have classes during Ramadan. And then I do receive some messages from your friends saying that you'll be having problems if the class ends at 7. So you won't have transport to go back. You won't have enough time to get to purchase your food and everything. So I aim for the classes um, to end around 6 o'clock. The latest will be 6:15. I'll try our best to keep it at 6, and the rest of that 1 hour is for you to do some activity so you can go home and prepare for your breakfast, iftar, and then continue doing your work, somewhere at your convenient time. And then, yeah, so that's just for the housekeeping stuff. Other than that, I think for this week, again, thank you for cooperating. Hopefully, I won't take so long, more than 1 hour for this course. I'll break this lecture for a few videos, so it will be bearable for you and bearable for me as well. Okay, let's start. For this week, we're going to look at sociology of science. And first of all, these are the things that you're going to look at. The definition of sociology of science, followed by 4 different aspects of science, which highly related to the chain of discovery in science. And then we're going to look at the internal and external sociologies of science. I'm very brief on that. We're also going to look at, we're going to see scientists as a member of scientific community, not working in the silo. And then in the sociology of science, it's very important to know the rules and norms in science, which introduced by Robert Merton, known as the Mertonian norms. Also the abbreviation is kudos. If we have time, we're going to look at the Senko affair. If not, we'll see how it goes. All right. So first thing first, definition of sociology. So let's go to the definition of sociology of science. As a science student, obviously, you'll be wondering what is sociology. So sociology is a study of society. We also study patterns of social relationship, social interaction, and culture of everyday life. So those are the things that you study in sociology. It itself is a study of society, the patterns of social relationship, the social interaction, and culture of everyday life. Basically, it is a social science that uses various methods of empirical investigation and critical analysis to develop a body of knowledge about social order, and change or social evolution. Sociology is also defined as the general science of society. So now, what is sociology of science? I'll be looking at the aims when we answer what is the aims, and we can understand what it's all about. Sociology of science aims at understanding the social aspect of science. It comprises research about the social structure of the institution of science and their relationship to other institutions, as well as the influence on and construction of scientific knowledge. So basically, we're talking about sociology of science. We're talking about the social structure within the science institution itself, maybe the labs, maybe the relationship between the researchers themselves, and then within that lab, how does it interact with other labs? For example, if you're studying in biology or in microbiology, the interaction between that labs with other universities lab, with the governments, as well as the industry, what are those, the study of those interaction, those culture is called sociology of science. And we would also like to know, how does this interaction, this culture, this relationship affect the scientific discovery in the lab, right? Next. So in other words, we are looking at the human side of science, and we see that science as a social institution. But then again, what is science as a social institution? If you remember in my first lecture, I mentioned that science is about discovering the truth, nearing understanding the natural world. But apart from that concept, science also have other concepts. If you Google the definition of science, there's numerous definition of that, and we are currently looking at science as a social institutional system. So what is science as a social institutional system? The system itself has components that include professional activities, scientific ethos, social certification, social values, organizational, political, and financial aspects of science. So science is not simply, so like I said, there are numerous definitions, and this is one of the definitions, science as an enterprise, science as a social institutional system. So now I think we have been discussing about the definition and concept for few slides, and then hopefully by now you know that sociology of science is basically looking at the this the social side of science, the people in the lab itself, people in the lab and the institution related to the science, and how does it affect the scientific knowledge. The question is now, why do you need to study it? So first thing first, sociology of science examines a variety of connected matters. For example, it studied the effects of science on society and vice versa. I give you an example on the bombing of Hiroshima. So scientists, if things just happen as it is, scientists studied about atom and they come up with the innovation on atomic bomb, and then it falls under military power, and then it's being used for military purpose, and then it kills people, and then science continue living as it is. I mean, that people keep doing discovery without discussing what happened. um, Obviously, something is missing. It's simply just looking at the discovery without looking at the effects of science. So we need sociology of science to understand what happened, to understand the political part of how does the atomic bomb falls into the military purpose. So that's just one example. Other than that, also the sociology of science also look at how the society itself themselves affect the science. For example, again, I cannot obviously I'm going to look at vaccine because like I said, it's very close and near and the latest one. So vaccine, people, acceptance of vaccine, and then how the science going to response to people who are anti-vaccines. Are they just simply going to do science, or is there going to be a science or discussion among scientists and the public on such response? So that's one sociology of science. Another thing, the reason why we do sociology of science is because the ways in which it is conditioned by social and cultural context. Again, for example, why is the discovery of science in the Western is different than in the Asian? So obviously there's historical, political, factors that plays roles in the discovery and the speed of the discovery. And these days it has changed. So sociology of science will be able to understand this part. Also, sociology of science study the social structure. For example, what happened in Malaysian lab is different than what happened in Australian lab. So there must be some cultural background, some contextual, political norms and value that is different. So this kind of study, which is sociology of science, will be able to understand what happened and see whether it affects the discovery or the social activities or the scientific activities in both labs. And then it can also complement each other by saying that, oh, this culture in Malaysian lab, they should have this culture which has been practiced in Australia. So yeah, those are examples. Another one is the process involved in the production of scientific knowledge. So we need the sociology of science able to understand the processes. That sometimes people do have, there are some malpractice in science. So this kind of sociology of science, this kind of study will be able to address and hopefully correct all the practice in science, small practice. So just a quickly brief on a bit history of science, sociology of science, basically. So again, like I mentioned earlier in week one, science was not as important in previous civilization. Only after the scientific revolution, it gets all the prestige and revolution. Also because was in it, it happened at the same time with the revolution. So science began as a great enterprise. Only then it evolved into a social institution. During the great ages of technological invention, there were no scientists as such. So there were no scientists. In fact, no organized. So therefore, there are no organized body exercising a moral and intellectual influence that could be called scientific. So whatever people are doing on science, they just do it maybe because they are more interested in discovery, they have access, they have so many time in their life, like Leonardo DiCaprio, I think. Um, and then the men of science are not scientists. They are people who study religions, like Roger Bacon, painters like Leonardo da Vinci. Did I say Leonardo DiCaprio just now? Okay, sorry. Astrologers like Kepler, philosopher like Descartes, and so on. So no scientists during this time. Again, it was only in 1880s that science and scientists became recognized elements. Remember the scientific revolution in the ordinary life of Western nations. They then see science as important, as a has privilege, prestige, and so on. And only in 1890s, these elements entered the matter, of course, into the universities. So previously, people in universities study literature, study theology, study arts, and not science.